What's up guys, it's Zarek here, and welcome to my tier list for patch 13.1c. Because of some weird social engineering attack at Riot, they had to release a C patch instead of the planned 13.2 patch, so they basically could only change numbers. They're planning on reworking Underground and Gadgettine, but that's going to have to wait until next patch. However, all these changes to numbers on units did actually make a really big difference in the meta. So we're going to go through what I think are now the strongest comps on this patch. In my opinion, it's really just balanced everything, like, actually pretty well. I'm surprised how balanced things feel. We'll see in the coming days if things get unbalanced. Some people, find some insane comp. Oh my god, Lulu Wukong reroll with hackers. Oh, that comp is so broken. It's dominating the meta. But right now, we're actually pretty good. There's a lot of viable comps, so if you like a meta where you can play a wide variety of comps, you'll have a really good time. A thing that I think is actually really helpful this comp is staying open. The games that I have found that have been like really doomed for me are the games where I take a 2-1 augment that like hard commits me to a comp, and then I miss that comp, where I know I could have flexed into like 2 or 3 other comps if I just hadn't hard committed myself. So that's been helpful for me. If you're like comfortable flexing, then I think that will be very good for you. That being said, let's hop right into it. It's gonna be a little bit different of a review. Usually I give you 5 comps just straight up. I'm gonna give you 3 AP and 3 AD comps because I think both AP and AD flex are really strong, and I really like to just go off my first carousel, pick like a tier if I want to flex around AP, or like a sword or a bow if I want to flex around AD, and then let that sort of guide me. That doesn't mean you always do it right. Like if you take a tier start, then you get dropped like, oh, Giant Spelt or something, you go like Redemption and you have your bow and you can play AD. It's all good. But usually, like the first carousel, I try to sort of give me an idea of which way I'm going. So let's start with the first comp. I am going to go in order of, in my opinion, strength, weakest to strongest, even in the AP and then AD. So in my opinion, this is the 3rd strongest AP comp. I also wanted to give an honorable mention to Kaiser reroll, or just like Recon reroll. I think that's a really good comp. It's just, I didn't have time to include in this video. It would be way too long if I included that as well. And I've talked about it in some videos in the past. So if you go to literally like my last tier list, I'm pretty sure I talked about it. So if you want to learn Recon Reroll, go check out that video. But today we are going to be talking about Taliyah Spellslingers. So it's back with the buffs to Spellslingers. The comp is actually a bit more playable. Zoe got buffed as well. So yeah, the comp feels a lot better. It's a pretty standard version of the comp I have right here, which is just 4 Spellslingers. You're basically always going to be rocking this front line of Annie, Alistar, Echo. Taliyah is, of course, your carry. You usually want to get a Star Guardian, which is often Lux. And then, these last 2 slots, getting in a 4th Spellslinger is obviously good. And then Zoe's a really nice unit, just because you can Prankster her, you can hacker her to the backline and then use Prankster to disrupt the enemy, which is really good for Echo. This is like a very, like, not capped level 7 version of the board. If you want to get to like the most cap versions of the board, you're always going to be playing Syndra and you're always going to be playing Janna. So then you can think about cutting things like this LeBlanc, and even potentially cutting stuff like this Zoe, and just getting to like a more capped version of the board where you end up doing something like this, depending on what the Janna buff is. And then if you really want, you can get into like extra Spellslingers. Like if you have +1 Spellslinger, then it feels really good to just add like a random Sona. And then get 5 out of 4, and then if you have +1, you make it there. You could even play like a LeBlanc here at level 9 for 6 Spellslinger. 6 Spellslinger is pretty strong, and if you can get to 8, it's very strong. But if you don't want to play these, you can always just play more Aegis units. You can throw in like a random Leona and a random Nunu as like a really capped board. But like the key things, the key units capping out this board is Syndra and Janna. Syndra and having really good units on your bench to throw in. Ideally, it's Zac. Zac is so good on your bench to throw in because he buys infinite time. I literally had a game where I played this comp with Ascension, which isn't the best augment with this comp, but with Syndra throwing Zacs and Fiddlesticks in, you can stall for so long. You can also throw in Nunus, which are fine, Urgots, which are okay. The big thing is that usually Syndra's going to be throwing a unit into like the middle of the board or like wherever she's autoing, basically. So something like a Zac is way better than throwing in like an extra Taliyah, because the Taliyah is just going to get killed instantly. Mordekaiser's even a decent option if you don't have any MR Shred, either to play or to get thrown in by Syndra. But like Fiddlesticks, Zac, I would say are the best. Another Echo is fine, Nunu's fine, even Annie is fine because you have Oxforce in. So getting another Annie isn't the worst. As far as itemization, it's pretty straightforward. Talia is a big mana pool unit, so she really likes Shojin, and then GS and JG just let her cut through the enemy team. Stuff other options are like Gunblade is completely fine, even like a Death Cap isn't too bad. Hodge is fine. Like just generic AP itemization is good. Oh, Guardbreaker is another item that's very good on her, though usually, ideally, only if you have JG. Um, you can go without JG, but like you obviously miss out on the value of the crit chance if your spell can't crit. And then any itemization, Anic Spark is really helpful just for getting through the front line with Talia. Sunfire is really nice also to help get through like really tanky front lines that heal up. And then, like Bramble Vest or Declaw or Redemption or Gargoyles, just some kind of third tank item. So yeah, I don't want to get this video too long, so let's move on to the next comp. But yeah, this is Spellslinger Taliyah. All right, in my opinion, the second strongest EP composition this patch is Soraka. And you'll notice, same frontline, Alistar, Annie, Echo, because this is just like the generic AP frontline. If you're playing AP, you really want to look for these 3 units. And we're still actually playing LeBlanc and Zoe, so the only thing that's happened is we've swapped in Soraka and Lulu. Lulu, of course, gives us that Gadgeteen buff, which can be really, really helpful late game, and gives us Heart with Soraka, and then obviously Soraka is the carry. This is showing just if you have +1 Heart, it's always, always, always going to go on Zoe. Best case scenario, you get +1 Heart, like the Heart Spat, and then you can put a blue buff on her, and then she just becomes a battery for your team, just generating infinite AP. So if you can get this comp can like easily cap out at first place. And then of course, if you're in this situation, you really want to get in a 4th Heart. So for most of the game, it would be like Sona, which is really nice. She's another Spellslinger, and she's also, your 4th Heart. And then once you get to like late game, it's gonna end up being like Syndra. These are really good Soraka items. She is a low mana pool unit, so blue buff does wonders on her, and then JG Giant Slayer again. Same items on Annie. You can hack her in LeBlanc if you think you have a shot of killing backline. If you don't have the Heart Emblem here, I think it's fine to hack her in Lulu. But with the Heart Emblem, I think it's really important to keep Lulu as safe as possible. Oh, also something that I didn't talk about in the last one. Normally, you're just going to stack Annie with your items. If you end up in a situation late game where you hit Echo 2 and you can replace this Annie, you'll move the items over to Echo. But it's just that Annie's going to hold these items so well for most of the game that you usually just stack her, and she's like comparable to Echo actually, just because her traits are so good. But once you get to like late game, it makes a lot of sense to move items to Echo. But yeah, this is pretty much the same comp as the other one, so it's really easy to flex around between these two. Taliyah can even use blue buff, so you can literally just play, Annie, Alistar, Echo, carry like Sona for a while or LeBlanc for a while, and then once you get to stage 4, maybe stage 5, you start rolling down, and if you hit 3 Sorakas, you play Soraka 2. If you hit 3 Taliyahs, you play Taliyah 2. So that's what feels so good about this patch, is I feel like there's so many different carries that you can play. You can play so flexibly that like it's just really easy to always hit something. Even if you miss on the Taliyah, you'll probably hit Soraka. Or if you miss on the Soraka, you'll hit Taliyah. So yeah, this is basically the exact same as the other board. If you don't end up having like the +1 Heart, and you end up getting something like Cinder in, Lulu can come out later, or like Nunu, and you can still keep your Gadgeteen buff in, but obviously get Mascot and like a much better unit. So you can do something like this as a late game version of the board that is quite strong. So yeah, I mean, like the other comp, there's a lot of stuff. You can like try to get in the Leonas later for Aegis. You can obviously have Cinder throw and all the good stuff. You can play like a random Urgot in any comp. This Urgot unit's too good. You can even like go a duo carry angle with Taliyah plus Soraka. Oh, I didn't really talk about admins in this comp. Admins that are really good. I think a lot of the on-death ones are very good. Something to point out actually is that like an on-death admin, your admins get 20 mana. Hackerim counts as a unit, so Hackerim counts as a unit dying. So if you're playing an admin that says on death your units get this thing, always play Hacker, because the Hackerim will immediately trigger it. That's how you see some people who get like 4 Hacker in, or not 4 Hacker, but 4 admin in. They just play Hackerim, and if it's like 4 admin, your units can generate some extra gold. The Hacker will immediately trigger and get you infinite gold. I can literally... wait, I wanted to show... Yeah, here it is. This is a game that I played recently where I hit that, literally that exact setup. My 2 admin was like on ally death, your admins gain AP, and then my 4 admin, which I ended up taking out later, was on ally death, 33% chance for your admins to generate gold. I played Hacker the entire game, played around Soraka LeBlanc duo carry, and as you can see, I just farmed infinite 5 cost because I farmed a ton of gold. The only reason, like, I honestly probably could have got to a point where I, like, started getting 3-star 5 cost, but I was too afraid of dying, so I swapped out for admin. And this is literally a board where I had to play Petricite Chains, just play Silas the entire game. And it was completely fine just because the rest of my board was so broken. So this shows you just like the power of a very strong admin. So that one's very good. Anything that's like on combat start give AP. On combat start give mana is like a little bit awkward oftentimes, just because you're going to be itemizing blue buff a lot of the time. Things that are like on kill gain mana, on kill gain AP are good. This you generally want stuff that's like selfish for the admins, but stuff that buffs the team is also completely fine. But yeah, that is Soraka carry. Let's move on to, in my opinion, the strongest AP comp this patch, and that is Viego. I said Viego was my number 2 comp last patch, and then it like almost got relatively buffed. It got nerfed, but the nerf was so small that I feel like it is still very, 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 very strong. So yeah, this is just a really straightforward version of Viego where you end up playing 3 Renegade, 6 Ox Force. This is a pretty flexible comp. As I've talked about in the past, the only units that you really like need to play, and this is pretty good anti-itemization, but yeah, like the only units that you need to play around in the Viego comp is this, and then after that you can build a comp around it. And even if you don't have this, like early game, you'll usually be playing Camille. Something that I like to do a lot is play around this core, so you add LeBlanc for admin. Ideally, you want like a team-wide admin because you want to be buffing up Viego. Yeah, you add LeBlanc and you add Annie. Like this is actually a really, really nice early game board. Like obviously you're not going to have Viego. So like over Viego usually comes Silas in like an early game, and then you're carrying either LeBlanc or Talon. But yeah, like this is a really, really strong early game version of the board where you can just have, I mean, everything in really. Like the LeBlanc fits in so well with the admin and the Spellslinger. So yeah, like I don't want to get rid of Viego. I mean, look, if you want to see Viego items, Ionic Spark's amazing on him. JG is usually good on him if you have a lot of AP, which Ionic Spark and Gumley get you to. But actually a very reasonable replacement for JG is Death Cap. In a lot of situations, Death Cap is as good, if not better, than JG on Viego. I'll actually pull up a spreadsheet for you guys real quick. And just someone remind me to put this in the YouTube comments. But it's a damage ult calculator based on multipliers with different items. So it basically tells you at what level of AP, like JG is better than Death Cap. So like for example here, at 60% AP and everything below it, Death Cap is actually better than JG for your ult damage. Once you hit 65%, then JG becomes better. And then, like you look at like IE, obviously IE is generally worse, but not too much worse. And then something like GS is also like comparable. Though I think this is if you're hitting like a GS. Yeah, GS is versus Giants. So like this shows you that if you aren't at 65% AP, then Death Cap is actually preferable to JG. And then you look at like Ionic Spark. I guess it doesn't show the stats that it gives here. But I believe Ionic Spark plus Gunblade gets you close to 65%, but I don't think it quite gets you there. And then obviously if you have something like Battle Mage, then JG becomes a lot better. Or if you have like an admin that gives you AP, then like JG becomes a lot better. But yeah, like Death Cap's actually a lot better. Like if you end up ever in a situation where your items are like Ionic Spark, like Giant Slayer, which obviously doesn't give, they did change it to give a little bit of AP, right? But it doesn't give a lot of AP. It only gives like 20. So if you end up in a situation like this, and then I imagine this only gives 10, like this is only plus 30, and then like you add JG onto it, this is only going to give you 15. So it's going to only be 45. Like in this situation, JG is actually worse than Death Cap. If you have no other source of AP. The reason why, like JG is always good on Taliyah is because she's getting that extra AP from Spellslinger, and then like Soraka as well is always getting this extra AP from like Heart. But like Viego has no way of getting extra AP. So yeah, that was a lot of information. But yeah, just to say that, Viego BIS doesn't always necessarily have to be JG. Another thing that I like to do in this comp is if you can't get to an Ionic for whatever reason, Static Shiv is a fine replacement on your backline. And then that allows you to just go 3 items on Viego, so you can go like a Titan's Resolve or something here. This is fine though. I would obviously ideally like to have some kind of healing item here. So like boom, like this kind of Viego setup with a Static Shiv in the backline isn't the worst. I'm still like not completely sure if it's like better to play Static Shiv versus Ionic, but I do think it's like a doable replacement if you have to. All right, the video is getting long, and I still haven't gotten to AD, so I'll go to the next comp. But yeah, I think this is a very, very, very solid comp, and yeah, you can basically, like I said, just flex around late game this setup, and then just play whatever. So you can obviously like getting another Ox Force is usually good, so you can put in like a Phelios and then like a capped port. You can be like adding in Urgot, adding in Fiddlesticks, and like add in like an Echo or something for extra Aegis, and this like boom, this can be your board. All right, let's move into AD. In my opinion, the third strongest AD comp is Samira. This is, basically the comp that you know and hate from last patch. Sureshot Samira with set frontline. It's still very good if you can get there. I don't really like playing around 4 aces anymore. I've found it to be pretty underwhelming at a game where I hit 4 ace on 5-1 and then ended up losing a few fights, though maybe that was just because my board wasn't as good as I thought it would be. But yeah, like 4 ace, Samira 2, MF2. But I've had good success playing around the Sure Shot variant. So I think this is quite a reasonable board. You can still run set frontline, or you don't necessarily have to. You can always just play like a more flexible frontline now that Sejuani's a lot stronger. I have been really enjoying like Sejuani +5 +Echo as a frontline. Oh, I got rid of Vi. I'm sorry. But yeah, I've been really liking this as just like a flexible frontline, so you can even do something just like this, and it's totally fine. And then you can add another frontliner if you feel in need of frontline. You can add in some other unit if you feel you need something else. You throw in like another Urgot. You can obviously put in like a Janna, especially if it's like windy weather. That's very good with Samira. But yeah, I mean it's pretty straightforward. So I guess I won't go too in depth. This is BIS Samira. She really needs Last Whisper to get through the armor. Hextech Gunblade is amazing on her because it just lets her heal up the front line. And then Infinity Edge to make her spell crit is good. Also Giant Slayer is fine. Guardbreaker is okay, though I've seen it be less prioritized now that, set isn't as big. But yeah, she's just a very good sort of like capped out AD comp that if you can play Duelists early and then pivot into this, or like Lasercorps early and then pivot into this, you can have a very, very good time. So just another AD comp to keep in mind, or I guess the first AD comp to keep in mind. All right, let's move on to the next one. This is 6 Lasercorps Zed. This is a comp that I talked about in my last patch video as well. It was so good last patch. They barely touched it with a nerf, and they also buffed up Zed. So it is, I would say, probably the most consistent AD comp. I say AD in quotes because you really want MR Shred because so much magic damage comes from Lasercorps. So like having an Ionic in the comp is really good. And also, don't sleep on the Ionic Zed. If you actually look at the stats on this Zed unit, like Ionic is quickly becoming like a very, very solid item on him, just because you get to Ionic him to the backline, and then he is, MR shredding all the important stuff. But yeah, like if you look at Zed BIS on like Meta TFT, Ionic. It literally says it's his second best item. If you do look a little bit deeper into the stats, you will see that Ionic actually tends to be, whoops, I don't know what I clicked there. It actually tends to be a better item on Sejuani. So like if you go to Ionic here and look at Sejuani, looks like it's generally more often on Sedge, and it places better on Sedge. And then obviously if you can get it on Fiddle, it's like amazing. So don't sleep on the Ionic Zed, but like normally you'd put it on Sedge. But like if you for some reason don't want it on Sedge, if you're all tanked up, then you can put it on Zed, and it's like pretty good. But yeah, outside of that, like Zed items, Titans is completely fine. Some extra healing is not bad, though you're obviously getting healing from Hacker, so it's not the end of the world if you miss out on healing. Edge of Night is core. You need this item so badly. If you can't get it, Quicksilver can help Zed like not die immediately, so you could end up doing something like this perhaps, and it wouldn't be the end of the world. But yeah, it's a really straightforward comp. You just play 6 Lasercorps, Zoe, Echo, and then Hackrim Zed to the backline and have him do work. Lasercorps is such an insane opener this patch. If you see Lasercorps units and you have bows or swords, I am just immediately clicking on them. So that's something to absolutely keep in mind. You just win rounds for free early game because Lasercorps is so broken. And as I've said before, a Lasercorps spat is like really good in this comp just because you're playing a lot of useless units. The Ash and the Renekton can like easily come out once you get the Lasercorps spat. Or just like better units. You can fit in Aegis like this, though I would probably be looking to fit in like an Urgot or a Fiddlesticks, just because these are very strong flex units. Obviously, late game, Renekton or Ashe is going to come out for Mordekaiser, and then you can have like a setup that looks, say, something like this. Be careful with Mordekaiser 1, though. You got to be really careful, because Mordekaiser 1 with no items will oftentimes die before casting. He has to auto a lot to cast, so be careful with him. He very well can die before casting. But yeah, that's a pretty straightforward crash course onto this comp. You know, like early game, you can item hold Senna, you can item hold Ashe, and then eventually you'll transition items to Zed usually. Though Senna can hold items quite well. You know, if you end up in a situation where you're stuck on Zed 1, just slap all your items on Senna 2, and you know, like eventually, ideally, you'll move items to a Zed 2, but like don't get too greedy and put all your items on a Zed 1, because he is very, very fragile, especially if you don't have like Edge of Night. Like if this is your setup, then these items are much, much better on Senna 2 than they are on Zed 1. All right, we're at 20 minutes. Let's do the last comp. This is the comp I have been loving this patch, and this is Bel'Veth carry. So I think, like on average, I don't know if it's actually a lot stronger than the Lasercorps comp, but I think like the cap of this comp is actually really high, and like relative to just the fact that like Bel'Veth is pretty uncontested in my lobbies, and we'll see, maybe she'll become more contested over the next few days. Like she seems so incredibly strong. So this is like my #1 comp to watch this patch, I would say. Bel'Veth best in slot is always Last Whisper, because she just needs it to get through a bunch of tanky units. Gunblade is amazing on her. She needs some kind of healing, because very often she'll end up like dashing, you know, she'll like start the fight like here, and then like dash here, and then, you know, like say there's like an enemy carry, you know, like there's an enemy like Taliyah right in the corner, like very often she'll like dash here, and then like dash up to like here, and like dash up to like here. You know, she loves dashing into the enemy backline, so having some kind of healing on her is really important. And then IE is very, very good on her as well, just to give her the chance to crit. So yeah, this is a really, really flexible comp. You can play basically anything as your front line in this comp, and basically anything in your back line. You know, the threats usually make sense, because like obviously it's hard to get in a ton of synergies when you're playing around a threat unit. So just Urgot Asol, especially if you have no healing reduction, Asol is very strong, and then Fiddle and Zac are good front lines. Once again, this package of Vi 20 Echo I think is very good. But you know, like if you have +1 brawl, I literally played this comp the other day. I didn't have Sedge in, but I hit like a Riven with the Riven hero augment, Triumphant Return, where she shields your entire team. And like I literally just played this comp. It was like this board, and then it was no Zac, no Fiddlesticks, because I hadn't hit them. And then I played like Rammus plus Cho'Gath, and I literally thought I was going fast 8th this game, because I was like, what the fuck is my comp? I ended up hitting Bel'Veth 2, stabilizing around this board, and then I literally went like top 2 or top 3 or something. It was actually like insanity. So yeah, this Bel'Veth unit, I feel like she is such a useful unit if you ever think you're gonna like go bot 4 with AD items and you don't have the econ to hit everything. You just find 3 Bel'Veth, and my god, your board stabilizes so fast. So I would say abuse this Bel'Veth unit. I think she is very, very strong, and like in my lobby so far, she's not super contested. I guess we can go and look at like unit stats and see like how often people are playing her, because I think she is really strong relative. Like yeah, people are playing her like half as much as Samira, it looks like, a little bit less than Viego. What about like Zed? Like half as much as Zed? Yeah, I think she should be played, and this is only like Masters Plus, so like, you know, you can adjust it for your elo. I wonder if you go higher, if it actually changes, because I found her, yeah, like here it's like actually almost as much as Samira and Zed, still like half as much though. So yeah, like this Bel'Veth unit I think is being very, very underutilized. I think he is so broken with the right setup. So yeah, the other thing actually is you look at these items and you say, whoa, those look really similar to the Samira items. She's such a good unit. Like it's just so easy to flex between these two comps, right? I'm like showing you like similar frontline, similar carry. You literally like carry these items on like a Senna with Lasercorps in, get to stage 4, roll a bit, find 1 Samira, find 1 Bel'Veth, stage 5, roll a bit, find Bel'Veth 2 or Samira 2, and like boom, that's your comp. Like, it's so nice that flexes back. This is why I feel really like my most recent games that have actually been bad. I went on a good win streak yesterday and then cracked it by playing one game where I first item here. I can just show you guys, because I landed in this lobby with like fucking Soju and Kuram and like a bunch of Chally players, and I was like, oh, it's lit. Took first augment Renegade heart without Renegades. Didn't see Renegades for like the rest of the game. Had to take a Zed augment second. Oh god, this game was so fucked. Like this game had to be an ace, but obviously Like, I hated that I locked myself into Renegade here. And literally the exact same thing, Sureshot game, locked myself into Sureshot Crest at the beginning of the game because I was like, boom, Sureshot, all good. Then get to late game, and I realize I am three-way contested in Samira. This person had Samira 2, this person had Samira 2, and then someone else had Samira 2, and it looks like they pivoted out of it. Maybe this person. There were literally 9 Samiras out of the pool. I was like, my game is so fucked. My game is fucked. So like, yeah, I think it feels so much better to just leave yourself flexible, be able to play around Samira, be able to play around Bel'Veth, even like potentially could pivot into like a Zed comp, because there's just so many carries that can work this patch. But yeah, okay, don't want to make the video too long, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please interact with it in some way, like comment and or subscribe. Also check out all my links down below to my Twitch where I go live very often, my Metafy where I offer coaching if you're interested, my Discord where you can talk with more people in my community, and theorycraft, share games, all that cool stuff. And yeah, good luck in the climb. I think this is actually a really, really good patch. We'll see how it shapes up over the next week or so. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and good luck in your games. Catch you later.